The International Association for Near-Death Studies presents NDE Radio, a weekly exploration of near-death experiences and similar encounters with the other side. Now, here's your host, Lee Whitting.
Welcome to NDE Radio with Lee Whitting, whether you're listening on TalkZone, by podcast through the archives of our ad-free shows on our YouTube channel, or connected through the incredible content of our Facebook page. Our guest today, David Wallace, holds advanced degrees in psychology and theology and is a retired educator and author of the book, The Journey of Our Souls. As well, he is a Hawaiian cultural practitioner, Reiki master, remote viewer, clairvoyant, and spiritual coach, among other skills that he has. As an ordained minister, he accepted the role of kahu caretaker to teach and help others to heal. David is currently focused on expanding his gift of clairvoyance through remote viewing and associative remote viewing. He has combined Reiki and remote viewing to create a method of medical intuition. David has experienced a mix of 4 distressing and illuminating NDEs in his life, which he will tell us about today. David was born and raised on the island of Molokai, Hawaii, a community established for Native Hawaiians, and believes many of his gifts and abilities can be traced to his parents' genealogical lines. Today, David lives with his wife, Ellie, in central Oahu. David, welcome to NDE Radio.
Aloha.
Aloha. I should have said that myself. Let's see. I was wondering, since you're so familiar with Hawaiian culture, perhaps we could begin by your telling us something about the pre-Christian religion of the Hawaiian ancestors.
Yeah, the religion, or I prefer calling it spiritual practices, because what one person worshipped and who they the gods that were important to them had a lot to do with what they did for a living. And so, for example, if I was a fisherman, I would be very focused on praying to the gods that made me a better fisherman. Okay, and it would be a waste of my time to try and worship gods, that the taro farmers would be worshiping, because I would have nothing to do with taro. So it was very individualized in the spiritual practices, and even fishermen that fished and went in the same ocean and area, they would have different gods based on their family lines. So it was a very complicated but very individualized, spiritual practice. So for Hawaiian practitioners, that's why there's so many different Hawaiian practitioners, and we do things differently. It's because of our belief systems, and we accept differences between each other. Yeah.
Above all the various gods of fishing and farming and so forth, was there a superior god, or a god that unified them all?
Actually, when the Christians came in and stuff, they asked the same question, and it was interesting that the gods that were important to the chiefs, and the most important one for the chiefs was Ku, and Ku is the god of war, the snatcher of land, but Ku is also a god associated with fishing and healing. So Ku would be one of the paramount gods, along with Kane, which is the god of life, and Lono was seen as the god of agriculture. So those are the 3 main gods. In fact, in the lunar calendar, you would have Kukane, Lono, and Kanaloa, which is the god of the oceans. They are part of our lunar cycles.
Yes. Well, the ocean plays a big part in Hawaii's surroundings, for sure.
And that's our freeways.
Yes. So, David, when you were 5, you had your first NDE, and it happened, I guess, when your brother Bill and you were wrestling in the back seat of the car, and the car opened and you fell out of the moving car and landed on the asphalt. Tell us about that and what you saw.
Yeah. Well, on my way out of the door falling, I recall kind of like I had this urge to kind of like avoid from falling. I know I was going to hit. And so I felt myself pulling up back, trying to get myself back into the car. And I think it's that motion that drew my spirit out, because from that point on, I didn't feel any pain. I didn't even feel myself hitting the ground. And the next thing I knew, I was floating above the road and looking down and seeing this poor kid on the ground. I didn't know it was me. I just thought it was, a poor person and was injured. I saw blood. Then I saw my brother. The car had stopped, and my brother came running out, and he was trying to wake me up, and he was crying. And he was out of it. And my aunt was driving the car. She came out, and they were panicking. Fortunately, there was another car behind us, and I think they're the ones that decided to go to our home, and we were really close to where he lived, and that's where they got hold of my parents. And but while I was out of my body and I started looking around, I recognized where I was, but the colors of everything around me, the grass, the trees, the valley, the sky, everything was real different, was really bright, and the colors were so rich. What made me scared is that I saw shadows that appeared to be like human shadow outlines, and they were coming towards me, and I got scared. And when I got scared, that's when I felt a person kind of like reach from behind me and pulled me in. And when I looked back, there was this huge man, and a Hawaiian man, and he kind of like looked at me, and it was really weird because that was the first time I seen him, but I wasn't afraid. It felt like somebody that was good, and he whisked me away. So that was my first encounter with one of my ancestors coming to protect me.
Yes. And did you go through a tunnel?
Actually, we went through a lot of things.
Oh, tell us what you saw.
Well, when we were flying, we were airborne, and we were kind of like shooting through space. And at first, it didn't look like a tunnel. It was just like zipping through place. In fact, the closest thing that comes to that is when I was watching Star Wars, and when they hit, or even Star Trek, when they hit the warp button and everything, the lights just coming back. Yes. And that's the closest thing that resembled what I was going through, but it was more like sparks flying and blurbs of lights just zipping by. And I could feel movement. In fact, I could feel something like a force coming against me, and I know we were hitting really quick somewhere. And I didn't get the sense of entering a tunnel until we came to this kind of like, it looked like a solid piece of land, and there was a hole in the ground. And there was light showing up from there, and that's where we entered and went down, and we descended into until we reached the bottom. And at the bottom was a small room, and the room was really small. It reminded me of being in one of those places where you used to drop off film. This small little box and stuff, you drive up film and you put it. It reminded me of a small room like that, or a guard shack. Yeah, just enough for about 2, maybe 4 people. And you said that's where we ended up.
You said it was octagon shaped.
It it was shaped like a stop sign, and on each side uh, of this octagon was a window and a door. So anytime I wanted to leave, I could. I just needed to open the door and go.
Yeah. And at one point you tried to do that, I guess, but
yeah.
But fortunately, your Hawaiian man said no.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Well, tell us, describe this little octagon room. I think you said it was maybe 12 feet across, approximately.
Yeah. Again and stuff. I went there twice. The second time was a little bit better. The first time, I had a hard time remembering exactly, but it felt real small and cramped. I think my bedroom at home was bigger,
No.
But it felt like I was trapped. And so the floor felt like cement. It was cold to my touch. The walls, in a way, kind of like remind me. Part of it was either stone or brick, was solid, and in the windows you had glass, and the doors were metal. It felt metal because when I kind of like touched it, it was kind of like cold. But the windows, you could see outside, and when I first got there were people. I saw people kind of like coming up to the outside of the windows, and they're calling my name, and they kept on calling me and trying to encourage me to step out. And so and when I looked at them, some of them looked like my family members. They looked familiar. And so they're enticing me, try to open the door. And so I went to the door, and as soon as I touched the door, my ancestors came from behind and pulled me away. Says, "No, you don't want to go out there." And I kept on asking why. Says, "Well, you look real good. Who are they?" And I said, "Well, they look like my ohana, my family." And they go, "Take a better look, because who's missing out there?" And by that time, I had several of my aunts that I knew. They had passed away.
Mm-hmm.
Some of my uncles, they had passed away, and I knew they were out there. They should be out there. They weren't. So once I figured out that these weren't my ancestors, they weren't friends, that's when they morphed into real ugly beings. It scared me. And so I said, "Okay, I'll stay here." Well, that's a good decision.
And I think your ancestor guide said, look with your spiritual eyes rather than your physical eyes.
That's correct. Yeah.
And what did that feel like? I mean, how did you do that?
Actually, I had to really use my imagination. He was calling on me to use my imagination. And so the Hawaiian saying and stuff is that your eyes can deceive you, yeah?
Yes.
And in fact, there's a tattoo that one of my cousins wear. He blacks out a portion of his eye. And there's a black patch over there. So it's kind of like blinding your eye. And so the only way you can really see things in truth is by losing your sight. You don't use your eyesight for important things. You need to use your inner or na'au, your intuition. And so that's what the encouragement was. My spiritual eyes were intuition.
Interesting. And then I guess you asked your guide, "Am I dead?" And he said somewhere in between.
Yeah, he says, "Not really. This is more like a holding place, a safe place, actually." Yeah, this was a safe place for me to be. And I think the event was kind of like traumatizing. So for me, I was panicking, and that's what I noticed. Something very similar between a couple of my NDEs. When I was afraid, when I was scared, that's when my ancestors would appear.
When you think about it, do you think you're remembering this room as a 5-year-old would see it, or as a mature soul in a 5-year-old body would see it?
Actually, in my last NDE, I went back to the same place.
Yes.
So I think a lot of the memories that I had from my most recent and the first one gets intermingled
I see.
and mixed up.
Of course.
And so that's why sometimes I'll describe something, and I think I was 5 years old when this happened, but it actually happened in my last one. So because I went back to the same place, met with the same people, the only exception there is that on the last one, I had more than one person in the room with me.
And when you recognized those faces, they were tricking you. Those weren't actually ancestors of yours. They were demons or some evil spirits that were just trying to look like relatives.
Yeah, they were trying to pull me off. In Hawaii, we have a term for this lapu lapu polohe, or mischievous spirits that are roaming around, and they're still stuck at this plane, and they're roaming around, and they haven't made the transition to the next world.
Yeah.
So they want company.
And also, you said in your book that you had a conversation with his name was Kupuna, or that means ancestor, I guess.
Ancestry, that's correct. Yeah.
About your name, your Hawaiian name. Tell us. I'll let you pronounce it, and tell us what you understood it to mean.
Yes, my Hawaiian name is Imai Kalani, and it was given to me by my paternal grandmother, Ellen. And what I was told is she got the name from a dream. And Hawaiians, included me, right now I'm the family patriarch. Yeah. And when people come and ask us for names, we say, okay, we'll think about it, and we wait for a dream to come. And the name that comes out will be a result of a dream. And so my grandmother dreamed of a person that was here on earth, but was talking to the gods. And so having a conversation with the gods and the spirits, going back and forth. So Imai Kalani literally means I come from heaven. And that's one meaning. However, the name, Hawaiians have kaunas, or multiple meanings to a name. And that's what my kupuna was trying to explain to me. He says, don't just take the little meaning of your name, because as you grow older, the meanings of your name, the meaning of your name will change as you accept responsibility and it grows on you. So he said, right now it means I come from heaven, but it's going to be changing, and it describes a person that communicates with the gods.
And then you were, after that, back in your body? Do you remember anything about that return to your body?
Yeah, I was talking with Kupuna, and I felt really tired. And so when I got tired and exhausted, because I was fighting with him for a bit too, I wanted to get out and get out of the room, because I felt I don't like confined spaces. And so at the time, I didn't like confined spaces. And so I was trying to get out, and I felt trapped. And so in a way, I was kind of like fighting him both times. But I got exhausted, and I decided, I give up, and, I surrendered myself, and I went to sleep. And right when I fell asleep there, I woke up in my body.
And then when you were back in the hospital, at one point you said you either saw or dreamed the ceiling opened, and people dressed in white who were angels came down to help heal the children in the hospital.
Yeah, that's correct.
Oh,
in fact, that was my first. Yeah,
tell us about
that.
That's such an amazing picture in my mind. I'd love to have you describe it.
Yeah, well, let me describe the room first. The room, in the old days, I guess they used to put all of the kids together in the same room, and it was a huge room, and there's multiple beds. And on the time that I get injured, there was a flu epidemic on the island. A lot of kids are getting flus. So part of the room was reserved for people that had the flu, and the other part of the room was reserved for people like me who are injured but not sick. So when I got in there was not only me, but several other kids in the room. And I recall there was this one person, there was one kid that was so sick, they had a tent over him and they were pumping in oxygen and keeping him isolated because they were really worried. Anyway, my first night inside the hospital after I woke up and I found bandages and everything, and I think the nurses didn't want me to sleep. They kept me up. I guess they knew something about concussion protocols, but they kept me up, and so I was up most of the night, and I sleep once in a while, but they come in and wake me up to make sure I was okay. And early in the morning, I'm staring at the ceiling, and the ceiling begins to wobble, kind of like wobble. I'm looking at it, it was strange, and I thought it was earthquake or something. So I feel my bed, nothing shaking. I look around, nothing shaking, just the ceiling is kind of waving. And then there's a part in the ceiling, and the ceiling just breaks apart and disappears. And I'm sitting and I'm looking, I'm lying down, and I'm looking into the sky, and I see stars. And a big bright light came over the room. And from this light, you had these people coming into the room, and they were dressed in white. And as I looked at them, they were luminous, you know, they were shiny, they were filled with energy, looked like, and I wasn't afraid. Just like I felt kind of peaceful. It was shocking at first, yeah. But as they started to come into the room, and I started seeing them, they started walking around and putting their hands on the kids. And the sickest one, the one with, that had the tent, most of the angels were gathered around there, and I could feel warmth. I could feel the temperature in the room all of a sudden went, it was almost like I was in a sauna, actually, and really warm. And after they got through with that kid, they came around and visited all of us. And, you know, some of them came by me, and I could look at them right in their face, and they smiled, and they just kind of like brushed my hair, touched me. And I had this feeling like, don't worry, you'll be okay. You know? And it was very comforting.
One of the gifts, I guess, you got from this first NDE was the ability to see spirits. Mm-hmm. And you differentiate in the book between ghosts and night marchers. Tell us about that.
Well, night marchers are ghosts. They're ghosts of people that live. But night marchers have an established route. Okay, they're walking on old trails, and during Hawaiians, you know, we like to move like ancient Hawaiians. They like to do their activities when things are cool, and so most of the work that the farmers would do, it was done late at night. The movement, they were active during the night. They walk on trails. In fact, here on Oahu, they discovered several of the ancient trails still there in Kalaeloa area. And on these trails, you have these paths that are marked. And these guys are really smart because if you're walking in the dark, you need something on the side of the trail to let you know where you're at. So how they do that? They had white pieces of coral, and they line it on the side of the trail. So if you're carrying a torch at night, and no matter what condition you have, raining, whatever, all you need to do is look to the right or the left, and you can see the line of coral, and you stay in the middle, and you'll find you're on the trail. So yeah, they like to move during the night, and because of that, habit. So people going from one place to the other, like if we have fishermen or people that want to go down to the ocean, they march on a trail. The kings and the chiefs, when they moving from place to place, they have their trail. So when they die, and they continue the same patterns. Yeah.
So ghosts can be addicted to habits or habitual paths.
It's very habitual. You can count on it happening.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you could go, conceivably, you could go to a place that you'd be sure to see a ghost if you had that ability, because they'd be coming through every night on their way to somewhere.
Yeah, my friend, Lopaka, who runs the Mystery of Hawaii, Mysteries of Honolulu, actually, Ghost Tours, he mentioned that the night marchers appear on the nights named after the gods. So you have Kukane, Kulua, Kolu, Kupau. So there's 4 nights of Ku. And then you have Lono, then Kane, and Kanaloa. So on those nights, the spirits can walk. What most people talk about, the most dangerous type of night marchers, normally happen on Kane, the nights of Kane.
You begin your chapter on your second NDE with just a lovely quote that I hadn't heard before from Henry David Thoreau. There is only one path to heaven. On earth, we call it love. I think that's terrific.
Yes.
Well, tell us about your second NDE, where your friend Bruce pulls on your toes.
Yeah, I chose that because this man Bruce, he was a teacher, and he was a really good friend, and I held him in really high esteem. And so he was a teacher in Molokai, and I just loved that man. And he passed away while he was playing volleyball. He had a stroke, and but just before that, we went hunting with him, and he shot a boar. And about a couple weeks after that is when he passed away, and I felt really bad. And he left a wife and 4 children behind. Mm. So on that NDE, I returned from Chicago, 1978, I believe. I returned from Chicago. In the dead of winter, I had double pneumonia, and I was really sick. And so I was sick for a while. And this particular night, I told my wife at the time, I says, I think I'm gonna die. And she looked at me crazy. You're not gonna die. She says, no, I feel like I'm gonna die. So I went to bed, kissed her, went to bed, and I was ready to give up the ghost, basically. And in Polynesia, we have this custom. If you want to play a trick on a person or have a spirit talk through a person, while that person is sleeping, you get down and you pull his big toe. It's just like waking up his spirit. Pull the big toe. And when you do that, and a person is sleeping, and if he's sensitive, the spirit will wake up. And you can ask the spirit anything you want. And that's looking into the future, asking for secrets and things like that.
Wow.
And so I was fast asleep, and all of a sudden I felt somebody pull on my toe, and my spirit woke up. And when I woke up in my bed, I go, who did that? And looking at my friend Bruce, he's standing at the end of the bed, Bruce, we run and hug each other. And then I realized, Bruce, you're dead. And so I push away, and he's trying to hold me in a certain way where my back is facing the bed. And he didn't want me to turn around. And I says, Bruce, you're dead. Does this mean I'm dead? And he goes, no, 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 no. And I turn around and I see myself in a bed sleeping. And I start crying. I'm dead. He came to take me. And he's laughing and he's chuckling. He says, no, Dave, I just came here to show you something. And so we walk on the side of the bed, and he opens my closet, and he sticks his hand in the closet and separates the clothes. And when he separates the clothes, there's a hole in the closet in the back of the wall. And I'm looking in, and as I looking in, I can see way at the other end of this hole a light. And I look at my friend and says, what is this space? And he says, well, come, you want to check it out? And I said, not really, but if you came to show me this, okay, I'll take him. So I trusted him. And so he led the way, and I walked just a little bit behind him and started walking through this tunnel. And this is a real tunnel. And the odd thing about the tunnel is that it had many twists and turns, and it wasn't a straight one. And when I looked up, it looked like I was walking through some kind of blood vessel. All kind of strange things up on the top, but it looked more like a living organism than anything else. And it gave me the impression like I was walking through a blood vessel or of some sort.
Wow.
And there was, as we walked further, the light in the tunnel got brighter and brighter, and came to a point where our clothes changed. And what we were wearing was something white that looked like was feathers. And I said, oh, no. I remember talking to my wife when friends, when I was saying this, I looked at them and I started feeling myself. It was nice and soft and filled with energy. But I had a concern that I didn't write in a book, but I said, oh, am I turning into a chicken or something? Is this the next evolution? Next step in evolution, I come back as a chicken or bird, But that's what it felt like. It was feathery and really nice and soft. And when we finally reached the end of the tunnel, there's this membrane. And I grew up on a farm, and this membrane looked like an umbilical sac. It looked like plastic in a way, but it wasn't clear. It was kind of murky, but you could still see through. Mm-hmm. And on the other end, I saw a place that was just beautiful. There's trees, grass. Bright colors. It almost reminded me of the scenery that I saw in my first NDE. The colors are so vibrant. And there's a big tree and a pathway and grass, flowers, and all kinds of stuff. And the first thing I see after that is some people walking over the crest of the hill and coming towards me. Mm. And as they approach, I start recognizing right at the front, I started recognizing my grandfather. My grandfather passed away when I was 10 years old. And he was coming in, with the group. And all of these people that I recognized, I knew who they were. I could call them by name if I wanted to. So this big group coming over. And I realized those were my family members. They're my real family members. And the most exciting part is that I heard barking And I look, and from the same direction, my family members came. I had all my pets, my dogs,
Oh.
guinea pigs, pigeons, all my pets. They came running up. They passed my ancestors, and they came right up to the membrane, and they were jumping. The dogs were jumping up on a membrane, trying to lick at me, and I'm over there looking at them, and I name them all. I know each one of them. I knew all of them, and I'm crying like a baby because I miss them more than my family members. But I'm just, overwhelmed with this feeling like, wow, long time. I'm so happy to see folks, and I want to reach down and embrace them. So I'm looking at them, and my ancestors, a lot of my ancestors are saying, come, come, come. They encourage me to step through. And I look at Bruce, and he's not saying anything to me. I have to make the decision. So I take one step through the membrane, and I look in the group towards my ancestors. Everybody is saying, come, come, come. But my paternal grandfather is over there. He's looking at me and giving me a stern look and going, no. And I looked at him, and again, I still try to move, and I feel the hand on my chest, and it pulls me back. It's my friend Bruce and stuff. And I step back from the veil, from that membrane. And I look at Bruce. I said, no, I cannot go. And right around that same time, I heard the voice of my daughter. Daddy, where are you? And combine all of that together, my grandfather saying no, Bruce reaching in, and finally hearing my daughter's voice say, Daddy, calling me. I couldn't go at that time. It wasn't the right time. And it was the most difficult decision that I ever made. But after I stepped away and I said no, my friend Bruce hugged me, and he whispered in my ear, he says, I wish I had made the same decision. So, because he left 4 kids behind. Yeah. And so the next thing I knew, I popped up in bed. And my fever broke. My bed was just soaking wet. So my fever broke, and I recovered less than 2 days after that, and I was back at work.
Wow. Did your daughter Gigi remember any of this? I mean, did she remember calling you?
I told her about the story, and again, and stuff. When you go through things like this, sometimes your memory plays tricks on you.
Mm-hmm.
But I was at I was 25 years old at that time, so my memory was far better, and so I knew it was my daughter, and so when I told her about that, I said, "You saved my life. Thank you." So.
Now, your third NDE, you were very sick, I guess. Avian flu, meningitis, kidney failure. I mean, everything was happening.
Yes.
But this one is like something out of Dickens' A Christmas Carol. This is quite a scene. Tell us about this one.
Yeah. Well, my occupation as a teacher has many hazards. And one of the hazards is that our students here in Hawaii, during vacation, they like to go visit, their families in foreign countries. And in the community that I had, that I was teaching, there was a lot of Filipinos. So we, on Christmas vacation or any other vacations, holidays, a lot of them would leave the islands, go back to the Philippines, and when they come back, the types of diseases actually they come home with, the illnesses that they come home with. Some of them are devastating. So we did have a couple kids that went on vacation into the Philippines, and when they came back, they brought avian flu. And so that's how, and I had 3 of them that came back and was in my class, and they were sick. And I knew they were sick, and I sent them to the health room. But by then, I probably picked up the bug. So I came down with that. And so I also have type 1 diabetes. So anytime I'm ill, my blood sugars can go crazy.
Yes.
And so that's the case that it was. So I had avian flu, and my blood went septic. My blood sugars were so high, it wasn't even registering on the monitor. I thought my monitor was broken. And my fever was getting insanely high, and dehydration. And so I was home from work for about 3 days, and I was trying to self-care and self-medicate. And finally, when I decided to go to the doctors, I walked to the front door and I passed out, and I fell through a series of jealousies by our front door. And right when I did that, lucky there was a custodian outside cleaning up the pond, and he called the ambulance for me. And when I went to the hospital, and the doctor started taking blood work, and the doctor came in, and I'm in the ER, trying to wait and find out what's happening, and all these people running around. Finally, the doctor says, you know what, if you had delayed coming into the hospital for about 20 minutes, could not guarantee your life. It says, even right now, the odds are stacked against you. So they asked me permission to, do whatever they could. So I said, sure. And they put me in the ER room, ICU, and I had so many tubes running in and out of me that it was crazy. You know what a papaya tree looked like? Yeah, you have this tall tree, and then papayas all stacked on it. Well, that's how my IV bags were. It looked like a papaya tree. There's so many IVs going in with different things. It looked like a big papaya tree. And that night, my first night there is when I had that NDE.
Yeah. Well, tell us what you saw.
Yeah. Well, in the dream, I found myself in a cemetery. And I was trying to escape from the cemetery, looking for a way out. And it was surrounded by these tall gates, and I couldn't climb over it. And so I started running around and wondering, what am I doing here? And in my blind panic, I fall in a hole. And I'm sitting at the bottom of a hole, and I look up, and there's a headstone. There's my name written on a headstone, and I start crying. No. I fell in my own grave. And so I claw my way out of the grave, and I come out, and I'm looking at, and I'm feeling sorry for myself. From somewhere, I felt the presence of someone near me. And when I turned and looked, and there was this man, it's this huge, tall man, dressed in real formal wear. In fact, in some cases, it looked like he was wearing a suit, but it was more like a tuxedo. And had a top hat and a cane. And real classy, very, very handsome, very good-looking man. And he calls me by my name, and I ask him, "Who are you?" He says, "Well, I'm Death, and I'm here for you." good news, right? So I look at him, I go, no, and I stand up and I start running for my life. And he stands there and just like, call me. And as I'm running away and I'm looking over my shoulder, I see 4 dogs, black creatures coming up from behind me. And I said, I gotta find a place where I can, either run away or stand and fight. So I ran and I saw a tree, a huge tree. And I figured if I put my back against the tree, I could fight the dogs coming in from one direction. So I reached the tree. Right before I reached the tree, a dog grabs my foot and I fall on the ground. And I get up and the dogs are biting at me. So I stand up and I back up against the tree and I try to kick and fight. And I felt really scared. I could feel my heart beating. Then something really strange came over me. Instead of fear, anger. It was replaced by anger. And just like, you guys not going to do this to me. And I got mad. And this rage inside me just built up. And when this rage took hold of me, my physical body began to change. I looked at my hands. My hands had claws,
Wow.
Sharp claws. And my hands were muscular and started to stretch out and build up. And I was covered with black hair. And I started morphing. I felt myself growing to the point where I was so huge, the dogs looked like little rodents. So one of the dogs jump up and try and attack me and stuff. I caught him in the air with one of my hands. I caught him and I bit off the head and spit it like a grapeseed towards the man that was watching, towards death. And I throw him down. The other dog, I smashed him with my foot. And this other one came again and stuff. I just smacked it. And the third one saw what I was doing to his friends, decided to turn tail and run away. And when I'm done, I'm standing in there, just fully morphed into a werewolf. And I'm standing over there and I'm just foaming and filled with rage. And I look at death and I says, come on, come on, let's go. I was ready to fight him to the death, And he just sat back there and started clapping again. And I look at him. I says, congratulations, congratulations. Look like you have something to, fight for, something to live for. Yeah. And so he let me go, basically.
So interesting. Now, do you think that was more a dream than an experience, or was it a metaphorical? I mean, is it the way your brain interpreted something else? Because it's so unusual.
Yeah.
Except for a horror film, of course. It's a very unusual experience in near-death studies, for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think about it often, and actually NDEs and stuff are all happening right here, in your mind. And so for me, it was a moment of reflection, like, what am I going to do with my life? And if anything, all of the NDEs that I had and stuff, that's a core question. What am I going to do with my life from this point on? And so that's why whether it's a dream or an actual near-death experience, I count it as a near-death experience because it had the same effect on me as the others. It was a life-turning event, and it had happened right at a critical point in my life where, I was suicidal. I didn't care if I lived or died, and but actually, the dream made me really dig deep inside me to find something to live for. And I did. I did have something to live for because I had just met my current life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I just said that. And, without this woman in my life, I would not be the person that I am today.
Wow.
So it was a life-changing event for me, and it happened at the right time.
It's an amazing experience to go through.
Yes, yes.
We have time for one more NDE, and you just happen to have one. This was congestive heart failure and 3 heart attacks, basically.
Yes, because because I have diabetes. When I have heart attack and stuff, I thought I was just having a sugar low, so I popped some candy, and I was fine after that. And finally, I was struggling walking, and I could only walk for so long. And my wife was really concerned, and so she took in. She encouraged me to go to the doctor, and I listened to her. And when we went in and did the checkup and stuff, there was a blockage in my heart, and so I had to go in and do a triple bypass. And when I was a senior in high school, I had rheumatic fever, which messed up one of my mitral valves, and that valve needed to be replaced. And so when I had the heart attack and the bypass surgery, that's when they decided to stop my heart. So when they stop my heart, basically you're dead. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah. So when they stopped my heart, my spirit left. My spirit left, and I think it left at a time when they were finished with the operation. The operation was supposed to take 3.5 hours. 7.5 hours later, they're done.
Wow.
But had a lot of complications. But in my near-death experience during that time, I caught them while they were trying to revive me. And the surgery took a long time because they had a hard time reviving me. I had bruises, round bruises, all along my chest, all along the side of my chest, my rib cage, in my back. Was just covered with all of these things. So it looked like they were trying to shock me, and I wasn't responding. And during this time is when I had my NDE. I actually left my body, and I was floating above my body, looking at this poor guy was being treated by doctors, and doctors are panicking. Not the doctors, but the nurses were panicking. They were running around getting different things and stuff. And, so as I looked at it, I said, oh, whoever this person is bad shape. And when I came and took a look at the face, then I realized it's me. It's me again. And that's when I go, oh, shoots, no, cannot be, And that's when my ancestor came from behind and picked me up and pulled me in. Same ancestor that came for me when I was 5 years old came, and he grabbed me. And we went through the ceiling from the operating room, through the building, and we ended up above the hospital. And I remember looking around, and I could recognize where I was, downtown Honolulu. And I could see everything around me. And so it was pretty neat. Then I looked at him and I said, oh, kupuna. And he smiled and he whisked me off. And we were back in the same octagon room when I was 5 years old. And he held me there for a bit.
And he had some other tough Hawaiian men there to hold you too, didn't he?
Yeah, now as a adult and much larger, and I was at my prime. When I was hungry, and that's the thing that kind of like was spurring me. Why I was fighting them so much. I was hungry and I was thirsty, and the spirits outside had food for me. They were offering food, and they were offering food and they were offering food and drink and stuff, and I wanted to eat. I was hungry, and these kupunas of mine, when they came and got me, they weren't kind enough to give me food. So I was fighting with them, and finally, exhausted again and stuff, I just surrendered to them. And same thing. As soon as I gave up and gave in to my ancestors and say, okay, I'll stay here, the people outside turned mean. They turned ugly, and they kept on beating and trying to get at me. Now it's, instead of saying, come, now they're threatening me.
Wow.
Yeah, gonna get you, stuff like that.
That's scary.
And so my kupuna kept me in, and eventually I fell asleep again. And when I woke up, I was in recovery.
Would you say, they have good NDEs and bad NDEs? The one in the octagon room, or both of those in the octagon room, are ultimately good NDEs because you're safe, you're being protected. But just the awareness that there are evil spirits out there trying to bring you to ruin gives you a pause, for sure.
Yeah, there's a medium that I met with, and first time he met me, he cautioned me about millions of these beings that surround my person wherever I go. And I asked him, well, how far are they away from me? He says, well, they stand about maybe 5-6 feet around you. There seems to be this clear area around me where they cannot pass through. And I laughed. I says, yeah, because between me and them stand my ancestors, and they don't want to mess with my ancestors.
They'll pretend to be your ancestors, but they don't want to mess with the real thing.
No, not the real ones.
Well, David, this has been great. We're out of time, but I sure want to thank you for sharing your story, your amazing story.
Well, thank you for inviting me. I appreciate it.
If listeners would like to learn more about your healing work or get a copy of your book, what's the best way for them to get in touch?
You can get in touch with me. My website is intuitiveinsightshawaii.com. If you're on Facebook, you can look me up. I'm Kahu Dave, Kahu, Dave, Dave. That's on Facebook.
Okay. All right. And I really recommend your book. I found it really fascinating. There's a lot of detail that we weren't able to get to in our conversation today, but it shows a lot about how your experiences have led you into the healing field in a wonderful way. So, if listeners would like to hear the show again or any of our more than 450 archived ad-free NDE interviews, go to TalkZone's NDE radio site and hit the past shows button, or go to our YouTube channel, NDE Radio with Lee Witting, where you can subscribe to and comment on the complete NDE radio library. And be sure to check out our NDE Radio Facebook page. Just search NDE Radio with Lee Witting on your Facebook app. And listen again next Monday, 11 a.m. Eastern at TalkZone for more NDE Radio. I'm your host, Lee Witting, saying thanks for listening.